We'll see. Hopefully the sound on this is good enough. Hopefully you can hear the ocean. I don't know. They fell on the bread like starving wolves. I'll bring back the steak tomorrow, he promised. No, she said, surprising him. Send her up to me with her cookbook. I oversaw enough of my mother's feasts. I should at least be able to guide her toward something edible. Oh, he said, surprised. Thank you. I have to eat too, she said, clearly uncomfortable with his thanks. Yes, but it didn't strike me as your chosen area. Because I'm gently born? Because you seem more interested in siege weapons. Siege weapons are more interesting, she delivered back as she rose from the table. But we don't choose what life we get. We just do our best to make the most of it. And that was part of what was so frustrating. He couldn't have been born to this. Something had made him choose it. Maybe not all at once. Maybe in one small choice and then another. But somehow he had aimed himself here. Instead of having the guards escort her back to her cell, he walked with her. It made it feel less like a march to a prison cell and more like the end of a companionable evening. Which was awkward and sick, he knew, but he didn't have a lot of basis for comparison. Thank you, he said. For what? Some of the regular scorn was there, but muted, less cutting and more rueful. Or so he wanted to tell himself. For not throwing a fit over the admittedly terrible dinner. What do you think I am? She glanced at him from the corner of her eyes, her face resolutely forward. But she did look. A princess, he pointed out. And what do you know of princesses? Not much. I'm learning more. He thought for a moment. What do you know of wizards? In general, or dark ones specifically? It was not a snort, because ladies clearly did not snort, but it was a little huff of air out her nose. After a pause, she added, Not much of the later, I'm afraid, although I'm learning more. It was nothing, not even enough to be considered a backhanded compliment, but in her lovely voice it made his heart soar. He remained in his heart to stay grounded. Something terrible had been planned for her. It wouldn't do to get attached. He couldn't just be free of her. Zarakonar would come for them both. But what if they hid? Or fled? Would she be willing to flee with him? For the sake of freedom? A cruel bargain, he knew, and his stomach twisted in despair. What if he freed her and stayed to bar the way? A lonely, noble death. He still didn't want to die, though. He needed help. He had no one to turn to, really. Siriko would stab him in the back, he knew. His kind of problem was clearly well out of Orla's area of expertise. Literally anyone would be more of a help than Throck. The mayor, maybe? She didn't have a lot of incentive to help him, he knew. Gearbeetle. Oh, he'd made the lad cry over a tunic, and felt guilty over it. He couldn't bring himself to drag the little goblin into this mess. But Alicia was already in terrible jeopardy, and was clever enough to hold her own despite it. Perhaps she might be willing to renegotiate the terms of her captivity. When they rounded the corner, he was embarrassed to see that her cell's guard had fallen asleep. The goblin sat leaning against the wall, legs splayed and helmet tilted down over his warty face. It rose and fell gently as he snored. He blushed. How could she possibly ever take him seriously when he had surrounded himself with buffoons? How could anyone? Did he have to set someone on fire every day just to inspire a little discipline? Since he clearly no longer wanted to set anyone on fire, even jerks like Fiari, that boded poorly for future personnel reviews. He wondered gloomily what the valet had done leading up to his tunic disaster. If he was willing to tolerate such incompetence in general. Garavax had worked alone. Gav no longer remembered his exact reasons, and going by his current instinctive reactions, Garavax had had nothing but contempt for princesses, and women in general, and, well, probably everyone outside of himself. Garavax had made demonstrably bad decisions and had trapped himself, so getting out would require doing something that Garavax would never have done. Alicia stepped over the sleeping goblin's legs, waiting for him to open the door and shove her inside. He stopped. Now or, well, not never, but time would continue to run out. It was an insane plan, but he didn't have a better one. He would need help, competent help. She would never agree to help him out of the goodness of her heart, no matter how good she might be. But maybe he could give her a reason to align her interests with his, just for a little while. How would you feel about learning magic? If he'd startled her before, this stopped her dead in her tracks. I beg your pardon? This was a terrible idea. It was a genius idea. He was already committed. He needed to see it through. Your solution with the knowledge demon. It was brilliant. You've a fine mind, and that's going to waste, and you know it. She stared at him, looking for the catch. And you would set me free? Not a thing he could promise, but it could lead to your freedom. Her eyes narrowed. Why are you doing this? How much to tell her? As little as possible to start. He could always give more details later, but he couldn't take them back. I could use your help with something. What? That you'll have to discover, he said, trying to make it sound suave instead of stupid. He wasn't sure he succeeded. Will it hurt anyone? Not unless you choose to do so, he said honestly. He thought about it for a minute. Whatever other wizards were up to, he doubted that she would like it. You might even be able to help people. He could see the curiosity warring with caution in her eyes. She wanted to, he knew. It's not the kind of thing a princess is supposed to know. He prodded her, and that did it. All right, but this had better not be a trick. If it is, you'll have the joy of foiling it, he said. He was looking forward to this. He realized with surprise. Her lips twitched. He couldn't wait to see her eyes light up when she cast her first spell. This could work. She'd saved them both from the knowledge demon. Maybe she would find another clever loophole. And she'd like magic. He was sure of it. Maybe she'd find a way to like him too? He flushed, immediately realizing his foolishness. Don't hope for things that are impossible. Tomorrow then, he said. He just had to keep from embarrassing himself a little longer. He stepped over the guard's legs as if they were of no concern and opened the door. He gave a little bow. Your chamber, your highness? She shut the door herself. He stood pathetically over the snoring minion and stared at the door. The little window was shut. No one was around. He felt completely and totally drained. Too many emotions in too little time. Slowly, gently, so as not to make a sound that would alert her to his pitifulness. He let his head fall forward and rest against the door. At least this time there was no one to see. He closed his eyes, which is why he could hear the voices inside. What are you doing here? One hissed. It sounded like it might be Alicia, although he'd never heard her make such an undignified noise before. What does it look like? I'm here to rescue you, replied the other, deeper, male, trying to be quiet and not quite succeeding. Gav froze, his heart pounding in his ears. Does my father know you're here? She hissed again. No, he responded, not exactly. He knows I came to plead for your freedom, but I did not tell him that I would win you free myself. Today was just a way to learn more of the castle, you see. I would never leave you behind, sweet princess. Of course, he thought he recognized that voice, that foppish, preening idiot. He could feel power rising from the soles of his feet, washing through his body like a hot, red tide. How did you get past the castle wards? A very good question. His fingers had already started to shape themselves into a cradle for a fireball without any conscious decision on his part, but he stilled them. I went to the white wizard Arathano and told her of my mighty quest. She gave me 3 gifts: a ring that would make me invisible to all eyes, living and magic, a dart that would render a guard unconscious with a single pinprick, and a rope that can bear any weight. You merely have to trust yourself to my arms, and I shall rappel us both down the battlements to safety. Did she also give you a key that could unlock any door? The acid of her tone bathed his skin. Because in case you failed to notice, we're locked in here. But not that it matters terribly much. If it was just a matter of a locked door and a stupid goblin, do you really think that I would still be here? He flushed again in humiliation. Of course, if she could throw a dagger, the goblin guards were probably no real match for her, and he'd given her a lantern to brain them with. How stupid was he? Why was she still here? He should burst in and cut this short, but something in his soul wanted to see how far he had sunk. He needed to know what she really thought. It was like pulling layers of skin off a burn. Painful and short-sighted and sickeningly satisfying. He's not an idiot, she was saying. He wasn't? You see this thrice-damned collar around my neck? It's bespelled, you fool. If I get too near the boundary of the castle, I end up on the floor in excruciating pain. He let me prove it the first night. Her voice turned bitter. I thought I was so very clever. I collapsed, and he had to drag me by my hair far enough for the effect to fade. I nearly wretched myself. Oh, well, that was rather clever of him. Reprehensible, he supposed, but clever. Well done, Garavax. You poor child. He heard a rustle of cloth and pictured Fiari moving to embrace her, to comfort her. Gav's eyes narrowed. Death would be too easy for the fop. A thump. I am not a child, she said coldly. Gav snuffed the torches in the hallway with a quiet wave of his hand. No, you are the fairest of gently born maidens, and only true evil could subject you to this, Fiari tried again. I shall face him and force him to free you. No, you shall go home to my father and report everything in exact detail and have him send Arathano herself instead of some fool wielding single-use magic items. What was that cantrip? Oh, yes. He flicked his fingers, and blue fire raced up the seams of his robe to gather at his neck, unburning. Never! I could never abandon you here, alone, to suffer the lecherous advances of that stinking evil. His voice rose, and so did hers. Don't be daft. I need you to... I would rather face 1,000 deaths than the dishonor of abandoning you to your fate. You would have done better to listen to her, you know, he said, swinging open the door. She's a remarkably sensible person. They stared at him, looming out of the darkness, his face wreathed in blue flame, shock written about both of their faces. Good place to stop.